Welcome to Parks and Pixie Dust Podcast.
Johnny! How you doing?
Jesse, what's going on? I don't know where that came from.
Oh, everybody, welcome back.
Land of Neighbors. Welcome to Parks and Pixie
Yeah,
Dust,
everybody,
everyone.
if you're a new listener, gear up.
That's quite the intro if you're a new listener.
Yes. We've been enjoying ourselves for 4 seasons. This is our 4th season, and I'm excited about today's this episode.
Me too.
We're talking about the history of fairy tales, and with Disney, like, obviously me being a girl, I'm super into the princesses, and it's fun having a daughter who's, super into that too. But obviously, these stories came from somewhere, and so it was really fun to research and sort of understand where they originated and where they came from, because obviously they became branded Disney, but they used to not be that until Disney arrived, and obviously the company's only been around for a little over 100 years now at this point. So go ahead. Yeah,
and these fairy tales are quite dark, as you can imagine. So. Disney definitely put their spin on things. But so what we did for this episode is, obviously we didn't look at all of the fairy tales because there's just so many.
For sure.
But we each picked 2.
Yep.
And we'll just kind of go back and forth and talk about them.
Why don't you take it away, because Snow White was kind of the first Disney movie, right?
Yes. Yep.
Do you want to start with yours, Snow White?
Sure.
So you researched Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, and I did Cinderella and Rapunzel.
Yeah.
So cool. Okay. Yeah, take it away, Johnny.
So I'll start off by saying, so I actually have the book of Grimm's Fairy Tales.
Cool.
Because how Barnes and Noble had those compilation books, and it had the old style spine, and
sure,
it's hundreds and hundreds of pages long. So I picked one up a while ago of Grimm's Fairy Tales. So it has pretty much everything that they wrote or transcribed. So I started with Snow White. Love and everyone knows how we feel about Snow White, the character, and how aged that movie was. But for its time, it was a modern marvel because it was the first animated full-length feature. But let's see. And did you read your fairy tales too, or did you just research?
I just researched because it was interesting for mine. A lot of them came from different concepts. Yeah. Not just Grimm.
Yeah, right.
So
since I have that book, I read both of the fairy tales, and I thought it was going to be oh crap, chapters and chapters long for each of them. It was not even 10 pages.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For each of them.
Okay.
And they were easy reads.
Cool.
So I just kind of broke it down. Wrote down some of the differences from the film, and then why Disney wanted to make these films.
Totally, yeah.
All right, so Snow White. They do mention the Queen and the King briefly.
In Grimm.
Huh?
In the Grimm's version.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
So I believe it was the Grimm brothers who actually did write the original story. Okay. So they do have a king and the queen character briefly, but the queen dies from giving birth to Snow White.
Interesting.
And then the king marries the evil stepmom, who's just like the movie, obsessed with being the fairest in the land. But then that's it from the king. Obviously in the movie you don't see these characters or hear of these characters at all.
Right.
So it's just kind of where's the king throughout this? He's obviously alive, I think.
Right.
So why isn't he doing anything to stop this insanity from the stepmother? So how Snow White was 14?
Yeah.
She's 7.
Okay.
There's that.
Oh boy.
And she is. It didn't really mention the rest of, or her age throughout the rest of the story.
Okay.
But like when she does, fall to the curse of the apple, it does say that like time has passed. So, but like if she's asleep, kind of, or like quote unquote dead, she wakes up later.
Yeah.
I think she's technically still stuck in time, if you will. So 7 years old still.
Sure.
So that's weird.
Yeah, that's really weird.
And we also kind of touched on this when we were talking about, I think, Snow White and the Princess showdown. But the queen makes 3 attempts to get rid of Snow White, because every time she has the magic mirror, so it's just like, you're fairest right here, but Snow White is fairest in all the land. So, she hires a huntsman to kill her, or to lure her out into the woods and then kill her.
Yeah.
And then that's when he's just like, go, like, Queen's mad, like, get out of here. And she finds the cottage in the woods, like 7 mountains away from this kingdom. And then the queen makes 3 attempts to kill Snow White. So the queen must be in really good shape, is what I gathered, because she has to cross 7 mountains 3 times. Well, 6 times. Yeah, both ways, uphill both ways.
I hope she got a good Instagram pic.
Yeah. She has to. I mean, her OnlyFans is just lighting up. You know
what? I don't mean to interrupt you, but what I think of when talking about the huntsman, how she sends the huntsman to kill Snow White. I'm sorry, I just can't help myself. You've seen Austin Powers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Which one? Yeah. I think it was the third one.
Uh-oh.
When he's like doing a photo shoot with one of them, and she's like, he goes, shall we? And then they like start to hook up, and she goes, Dr. Evil sent me to kill you, but you are just so sexy. That's what makes me think of the huntsman, where he's like, the queen sent me to kill you, but you're just too hot. I don't want to kill you. You know what I mean? Like, I think of that.
Right?
Same concept.
And the huntsman is like this old guy, and and Snow White is 7. So there's that little fact too.
That's really messed up. So Disney at least did a little better with making her
7
be
more years.
13 or 14, but yeah, that's a really messed up story.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So the first attempt that the queen takes is lacing her up too tight with like, I think like a type of corset or something. And then she leaves thinking that Snow White is dead. She killed her, whatnot. The dwarves come back from working and they undo the lace, and she can breathe again. And then finds out that she's still alive, goes back, and second time uses a poisoned comb, which the dwarves then come back again and save her. And then the third time is a poisoned apple. However, like when to fast forward to the end, when the prince comes, his servants are kind of like taking the casket from wherever the dwarves buried Snow White, or like in the glass coffin.
Yeah.
And they trip, and like the casket like kind of like falls a little bit, and Snow White kind of gets jostled, and it unlodges the piece of apple that she consumed, or like got stuck in her throat. And then once that dislodges and throws like and shoots out of her mouth, she's awake. And so like also, like in the movie, the dwarves are just like, don't let anyone in the cottage. Like, obviously the evil stepmother is out to get her. So there's still the same thing where Snow White is pretty dumb.
Yeah.
The prince only appears like towards the end of the story. He doesn't meet Snow White like in the wishing well area of the kingdom. And this was creepy. Like he sees the princess in the casket, and it's just like pretty much to the dwarves, I gotta have her. Like, she's just too beautiful. She, this 7-year-old is too beautiful to the prince.
God.
It's just like, I gotta have her. And they're just like, no, we're not giving you the princess. And so he kind of bargained with the dwarves. And that's when he took the princess. And then she wakes up, and they get married. And at the wedding, the stepmother is present at the wedding.
Okay.
And as like her comeuppance, they force her to put on red slippers and dance, or like piping hot red slippers and dance on the floor until she falls dead.
Wow.
And that's pretty much it. Really, like, Walt Disney saw a version of this movie, like a silent version, live action, in 1916, and I guess he had been like obsessed with it since.
Okay.
And wanted to adapt it, which he and his animators did. So that was kind of like why Disney decided to make Snow White. And he made changes to the story,
right?
Because to make it more like quote unquote modern for modern audiences,
sure.
Appropriate. I guess 150 girls auditioned for the Snow White role.
Wow.
Until an agent called the actress that they landed on, her father, who was like a voice teacher and coach and stuff. And like the actress, Adriana Castellati, she was listening on the other end, just like, I want to play Snow White.
Interesting.
She auditioned and got the role. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess the reason Walt didn't want to have too much animation of the prince is because he didn't know how to draw men.
Okay.
So he was more familiar with animating male characters from like some silly symphony shorts before the film came out. So
wait, so Walt actually animated it himself?
No, his studio of animators did.
Gotcha.
But his animators, they're more familiar with like these cartoon animal characters.
Sure. Okay.
And with the silly symphonies, there were some human characters, but I guess it was more so female characters than male.
Interesting. Okay.
But to kind of like perfect, if you will, the female animation style, they hired the animator who created Betty Boop.
Oh yeah.
And to kind of get the idea of Snow White put to the screen and stuff.
Yeah. So interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it was just wild to read this story.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like too with these stories, once they were branded Disney, obviously I feel like what Disney stands for is to make things be happy, have happy endings, and not be so dark and stuff like that, and to even like with the animals helping her clean and all that stuff, like that's a similar concept even in Cinderella, which I'll get to in a second. Having those type of things to make it more for kids and families to watch.
Yeah, and obviously, like with these grim tales, they have most of them. I'm sure, if not all of them, like have much darker themes to it. And when I talk about Sleeping Beauty later, there's some heavy stuff that happens in like one of the iterations of it. But yeah, I think that's really all I have for Snow White.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'll get to Cinderella next. So Cinderella, when you think of fairy tales, you often think of Cinderella. I mean, that's just such a recognizable one. And when I was doing research, it was really interesting to read sort of about how, yes, like Grimm has an adaptation of it, but it kind of evolved as far back as it said BCE of the research I did. I found out that the Greeks actually had a story. The Greeks living in Egypt, this is what I read, told of a girl who attracted a king with her shapely sandal. So that was sort of like the origination of this concept of this story. So I'm like, no wonder why women love shoes. Like, this is probably where this came from, is that if you have good shoes, you're going to get a guy. And then in the years 618 to between the years 618 to 908, which I know is kind of a long-ish span, the Chinese first recorded a version of it. And then there were other interpretations throughout other Asian countries. And then it also made its way to Western Europe during the time of the Renaissance. And then some versions that were actually like recorded and performed, totally going to butcher this name, but Il Pentamerone by Giambattista Basile, which I believe was either a ballet or an opera of some sort. And then there was a version, a French version called Cendrillon. I totally butchered that name, I'm sure, by a French, I think, author named Charles Perrault, Perrault. His version, which was in 1697, had more of the details which are like of today's version of Cinderella. So like he's the one that introduced the concept of like a fairy godmother and like the carriage, the pumpkin carriage and all that stuff. So that was in 1697 was this French adaptation. And then the German version, which is then the Grimm fairy tales, was in 1812. And their main character lost a golden slipper. And then doves in a tree gave this character like the salvation. And Cinderella's father exists. Because like, you hear of like, okay, in the Disney version, right, the father, is gone. Like there is a father, he marries the evil stepmother, and then he's somehow gone, right? He passes away or whatever.
Yeah.
But in the Grimm version, the father exists. But it's an interesting thing is that there's no explanation ever as to why he tolerates her being treated like crap by the stepmother.
Right. Yeah. Same as Snow White too. It's
right.
Crazy.
Right. And so and then what I found interesting is that in a lot of these different versions of this story, the shoe is different. Like it was like a satin slipper in one version, and then it was like a red slipper in another version. It was interesting to read that. So then the story started appearing in opera houses in the 1800s, and it was still called Cendrillon, Cendrillon, which is the Charles Perrault, the French version.
Sounds like a transformer.
Yeah, right. No kidding. And then actually this I found interesting because being having been a music major and a musician, this was actually then written as a ballet by Prokofiev, Sergei Prokofiev, in the 20th century. So Prokofiev wrote a Cinderella ballet, and then obviously it was adapted eventually by Rodgers and Hammerstein into a musical, which I love the Cinderella musical. So great. And then it's also part of the storyline in Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods.
Oh, yeah. Because that meshes like a whole bunch of characters, right?
Yes, which I love that show too. So then,
How old is that show?
Oh gosh, let me look that up. 1986 it premiered.
Okay.
Yeah. So, decently old.
Yeah.
But
you call me old? I'm
right?
just 1 year after.
I know, right? I'm 89 when I was born. So then my big question was like, wow, this is really cool that there's like so many adaptations of Cinderella, but like when did it become Disney? And so what I found intriguing was that the movie Cinderella was released in 1950. So obviously it's after Snow White, because Snow White was the first. And it was interesting because Snow White was a big hit with Disney. And I guess that Cinderella was very satisfying because it also came out after the Great Depression, and they wanted something similar or reminiscent to Snow White.
Okay.
So with Cinderella, the concept, with having like the animals and a few friends and the mice and the birds and stuff, that was they did that to be kind of similar to Snow White because Snow White was a hit.
Yeah.
Because like if you hear of that, Cinderella and other versions, there's no mice and bird friends. You know what I mean? That's a Disney thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sort of the immediate, I guess, influence though of the Disney Snow White is actually the French version, which I thought was interesting. Okay. Not necessarily Grimm. And then I'm trying to think what else I've got. Oh, and then also at that time, apparently, like Walt Disney Studios was really struggling. So Cinderella was kind of a gamble to see if it was going to be a hit, and luckily it was, because I think Walt Disney Studios was not doing well at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I forget, like, that was kind of around, like, Peter Pan, I think Lady and the Tramp. There were a couple lull moments in the Disney studio history where they had patches of, for lack of a better word, duds. Yeah,
absolutely. And then, just a couple other fun facts that I had found. When it came out, did receive some Academy Award nominations, actually. Best Song, Bippity Boppity Boo, which I thought was funny, and Best Scoring of a Musical Picture.
It's a good score.
But it was interesting because A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes performed better on the radio than Bippity Boppity Boo, but that wasn't what was nominated. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, and then oftentimes they would release Cinderella like years later just to keep up the hype of the movie, to keep it kind of current. So it would be like re-released in theaters a lot.
Yeah, like the Disney Vault, when they would release things from the Vault.
Yes, exactly.
The Vault, I don't think the Vault is even a thing anymore since they have Disney Plus and.
Right, exactly. But yeah, so I was just, dying to know, like, okay, since there's so many versions of this, when though did it become Disney? Because what I found was like, yes, there was like all these variations of it, but then I think it was really, to me, it was like when Prokofiev made it a ballet and then Rodgers and Hammerstein made it a musical, that it was like, to me, the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical is basically the same story as the Disney version in the sense. It's just that there's just different music, obviously, but it still is the same story of the evil stepmother and the stepsisters and all that. But yeah, I found it interesting because it is such a well-loved story. But I also find it interesting with that compared to Snow White, how it's so funny how the stepmothers are like evil like that. I just wonder if it like is influencing what people think of like step parents. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it probably had some kind of influence on.
Yeah.
It's like you hear step and you're just like, oh no.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
It's going to make me do all the laundry and do all the cooking.
Yep, I know. So funny.
Yeah, like this was, also the earlier films when there was either one parent or no parents, pretty much.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that kind of played a part in Walt Disney's history as well. So, as we have talked about in the past. But, yeah, no, that's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I've got for Cinderella. What do you have next?
Cool. I got Sleeping Beauty.
Love it.
I'm going to just start off by saying, I read the fairy tale. What a dud.
Yeah.
I'm so glad it makes you really appreciate the Walt Disney animated film.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So similar to Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty was adapted from a story originally written by that Charles Perrault guy in 1697, and Grimm rewrote it or adapted it in 1812.
Yep.
And I hear of Grimm fairy tales and you think of so long ago. But these guys are making these stories like in 1812,
right?
The 1800s. You think about it's not that. It's long ago, but it's not that far.
Right.
Off. So yeah, I'll start off saying Snow White. It starts off mentioning the queen and the king. But also in the film, the king and the queen are both kind of more present. But the queen is just always wishing for a child, and she's bathing one day, and then a frog comes up and is like, I'm gonna give you a kid in a year. And so that was weird.
Yeah.
And then the movie, they have a party for the child so there's no fairy godmothers, and there's really no Maleficent. And also the prince isn't around at this moment in time. So instead of the fairy godmothers, they have 12 wise women. And the king, there's actually 13 wise women in the village, in the kingdom, but like Maleficent, the king didn't invite her and didn't invite the 13th one. And it was mainly due to the fact that he only had 12 golden plates for these wise women. So he only had 12 women show up. And it's couldn't you just get a 13th plate? How hard is it? Just another plate. It could be paper plate, whatever. So at one point, in the film, the women are bestowing all these gifts, and it gets to the last one. And then that's when the 13th woman suddenly appears and just says you guys suck. You didn't invite me. Jerks.
Yeah.
But on her 15th birthday, she will prick her finger instead of 16th.
Interesting.
And then she just disappears. And it's the final wise woman, the 12th one. It's the final one that is just kind of okay, so she's not going to die, but when she pricks her finger, she will just fall asleep for 100 years. So, Sleeping Beauty, when she turns 15, she's kind of drawn into a tower, and she's not in the woods like in the movie. She's living at home. She's living at home, and she's by herself. And you know how you explore your home when you're home by yourself.
Yeah.
Looking for spindles and oops, sorry. It's my second sensor. Whoops. So she's home by herself because like lurking around like the castle, goes up to a tower, and then there's like this old woman who is kind of luring her in.
Yeah.
And then she pricks her finger and she falls asleep. And when she does that, the entire kingdom falls asleep. And it's not like the movie where the fairies put the kingdom to sleep so then they could do their thing.
Yeah.
And then all these stories come about, like the country of like, you know, there's this incredibly beautiful princess who is like in bed sleeping. And so all of these princes are like trying to get a look at her, and like, which is very creepy.
That's really weird. Yeah.
Yeah. And
see, like that type of stuff doesn't age well.
No, not at all. Not at all. At least in the film, like there's a little bit of history with the prince.
Sure.
Because he shows up, he's at the banquet.
Yeah.
And then like they meet in the woods and sing and dance and fall in love.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's like all these strange guys just trying to get into this castle to see this sleeping chick.
The hot babe sleeping.
But they all pretty much die because like there's all these thorns that kind of grew around on the kingdom. So, you know, all these thorns are like killing them. 100 years pass, and then the prince, some prince hears about this and comes to the kingdom. And so now the curse has kind of like been broken a little bit.
Okay.
And the thorns are now kind of like all rosy and that kind of thing. So he's able to walk through with no issues, and he goes up to Sleeping Beauty and he's like, she's hot. And he's like, I gotta marry this woman.
Wow.
Or like take her with me, and kisses her, and she wakes up and they get married.
So wait, hang on. 100 years passed. So basically, he was not even born yet when she was pricked. And then so ladies, if you're worried about finding your guy, he probably ain't even born yet. Don't you worry.
Yeah. It's just the right will come. You just won't be alive.
Yeah. Just prick your finger and fall asleep, and then what the hell? And then also, how messed up is that? Because wouldn't her dead body be like disintegrated by then, like messed
you would
up?
think, but I guess like, you know, this curse kind of like froze her in time.
Okay.
Oh, well, it was because it was the final wise woman that lifted like the death spell. So
okay.
she was just like, she will just be kind of like frozen in time and be sleeping for 100 years.
Okay.
Which, I mean, everyone from the kingdom woke up once he kissed her, and it's like no one aged. It's so. And I was thinking about this, like, let's say this story took place in the year that they adapted the original fairy tale. So if it took place in like 1812, and then 100 years later is 1912. So I'm just picturing like this prince driving in like a Model T. And coming up with like, you know, all these guns and stuff and blasting through the castle walls. And
because that's another thing too. One thing I realized too with these fairy tale stories, do they even really say when they took place? No,
I think it's just like, you know, long ago.
Sure. Yeah.
In a distant land. That kind of intro.
Right.
But going now to why Walt Disney wanted to adapt the story.
Yeah.
He kind of wanted to do something different from like Snow White.
Okay.
And just kind of create like a tapestry of a film with like influencing a specific animator or illustrator named Ivan Earl.
Okay.
But like I kind of looked up like some of the paintings that she drew, and it's very reminiscent of what the film looks like. You know, like the very tapestry, angular style. But yeah, he just wanted this to be like the pinnacle of Disney animation at the time.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, kind of cool. And obviously, like he took away some of the darker tones. He added some exciting moments and characters, like fleshed out Maleficent and the Prince.
Right.
Made it more exciting than what the original dud was like.
For sure.
And, there's different iterations because it was adapted from this Charles Perrault. And I think like the original iteration had some tones of rape and incest and cannibalism. So obviously that was not reflected in the film at all.
Well, and like I said, that doesn't age well. Like nowadays, everybody would be all up in arms,
Yeah, because like it's like the queen is having many babies, I think, and she's eating them.
Oh God. Okay.
So there's stuff like that.
Weird stuff. Yeah.
And the score was based on the Tchaikovsky's ballet. And then like I think they wanted to also go more of an operatic tone to the music.
Sure.
So that's why they chose who they chose for Sleeping Beauty, because she had opera training and an operatic voice and stuff.
Yeah. I love the song "Once Upon a Dream" in that movie. I think that's a nice.
Oh yeah.
So I love that.
That's one of my favorite classics, and also "A Dream Is a Wish Your Heart Makes" from Cinderella.
Yes.
Those are just like when those songs come on, you think of like the castles and Fantasyland, walking through the park, and
totally,
it's just very nostalgic and comforting. It's like, oh, take me back to Disney.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So that's all I really had for Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, so interesting. Okay, so I've got Rapunzel next. So I didn't have as much about Rapunzel as I got with Cinderella. I'm sorry, but it was interesting because there's a lot of different versions of Rapunzel, and Rapunzel is also a part of the Into the Woods show as well. But the first dates of this story is in 1634 in Italy that I found. And it's a totally different name. Her name is Pascadosia. And it was interesting because when I found
that's kind of like Pascazio.
Exactly. I was wondering about this, like, what? But it was interesting. In this story, she was sold to ogres by her own mother after her mother stole parsley. And so then I was wondering, which I did not, I know, what the fuck's so great about parsley? Like, F that. But when she was 7, ogres locked her in a tower, which I found interesting because if you think of the movie Shrek, how Princess Fiona is like waiting for her prince and she's locked in a tower. So I wonder if like I need to do some research on Princess Fiona. Like, is that just a Shrek story or is that like a broken off of Rapunzel? You know what I mean?
I feel like Shrek is kind of like a mixture of all these different fairy tales.
Yeah.
Because it also mocks the Disney versions.
Right. So I thought that was interesting, But then, so in this story, though, the Italian version, she falls in love with a prince and tries to escape, but the ogres come after her and the prince, and then she saves her and the prince by using magical acorns to get the animals to kill the ogres.
Okay. All because she stole parsley.
All because her mother is a freaking thief and stole parsley. I don't know what the doo-doo so great about parsley, but okay. And then 1812 was the Grimm version.
They went to town in 1812.
Yeah, 1812. And that 1812 overture by Tchaikovsky, like, damn, that's some shit. Good butt year, man. There's some butt.
Why isn't that on a Now CD?
Yeah. Anyways, boom. But then my whole thing was, when did it become Disney? Obviously, it's a more recent of the Disney movies. It's the Disney animation. It's not cartoon animation, right? Yeah. And the reason actually why the Disney movie is named Tangled is because they wanted to actually appear to a wider audience, not just be like a princess movie. Like they wanted boys to be interested in the movie too.
Okay.
And then I found it interesting that actually they added, for the Disney version, they added the characters like Flynn Rider to be sort of the, the love interest, but the concept is still similar. If you think of the show Into the Woods, like it's the witch that's hiding Rapunzel, whereas Mother Gothel is that role. And Mother Gothel is selfish and takes Rapunzel because Rapunzel has this magic hair that'll keep her young, which is a little bit of a different kind of concept. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that it stemmed back to like an Italian version, and the girl was Pascadosia. I was like,
yeah, that's interesting.
That's part of like my last name.
It's Rapunzel and Flynn Rider.
Yeah, no kidding. So, But yeah, I did find it interesting. Hold on, let me just look up. I don't remember exactly what year Tangled came out. 2010.
Oh.
Yeah,
I was about to say that.
Yeah, so it just says, it's loosely based on the Brothers Grimm, but again with Disney, I feel like, with all these ones that we've covered, Disney definitely branded it to be, all of them to be a family friendly concept with a good ending type of thing.
Yeah.
To make it positive and, just so that it appeals to young audiences as well, I feel like.
Yeah. Now I remember when that movie came out, I don't know if I rented it or something, or oh, you know what it was? Remember Disney Movie Club? We were members for a while.
Okay.
And if you don't cancel a movie in time by a certain date, they just send you and charge you the movie of the month.
Nice.
So when I was a member, like after I moved out into the city, I became my own member.
Yeah.
And I missed a lot of like cancellations. So then I was sent and charged all these random movies. So I think I got rid of most of them. But I think Tangled was one of those movies. And I watched it, and because I heard like okay things about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, kind of bored. I'll watch it.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious. I loved it. And I was like, Mom, you got to watch this. It's really good.
Dare I say, in some ways, it's better than Frozen.
I can tell you it is.
Here's my thing. Frozen is a new original concept. You know what I'm saying? Tangled is not as new, but I think that the music in Tangled is phenomenal. I think that the scene with seeing the lights, oh my God. Like, it's such a good movie. I love Mandy Moore, her voice. You don't have to hear Idina Menzel screaming. Like, it's great. It's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I remember there was one time when I was at Hollywood Studios, I think when it was still called MGM Studios or even the Disney Studios.
Yeah.
And you know where they have like the animation courtyard where the Little Mermaid show is, and then they made that whole back part like the Star Wars meet and greet area and like whatever.
Yes.
Well, before it was Star Wars, it was like you're kind of touring and like learning about animation.
Yeah.
And like it takes you through different rooms and stuff. It was really cool. And Robin Williams was one of the hosts. But then the very last like room, or after the last room, when people are like kind of done with the show, it takes you through. You could like there's like some meet and greets, but then it takes you like along a wall of like upcoming Disney film.
Oh, okay.
And like just like one piece of concept art. I took pictures of it. This may have been like it was obviously before 2010.
Yeah.
But took a picture of what is now Tangled, and it had like it showed the guy like climbing the tower, and it was actually called Rapunzel at the time. So it had Rapunzel in the corner of it, coming summer of 2010 or something. It was cool.
Interesting. Yeah. I like that the movie is called Tangled, but I mean, I don't know, would it be boring to just call it Rapunzel? I don't know. It's such a great movie. I don't know, I love it. Yeah.
Well, like you said, if it was called Rapunzel, it would probably not attract too many audiences.
Right. Yeah. And I love that they added like Flynn Rider and then like all those characters at the pub and all that stuff. Like that's fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then she's got an animal friend, Pascal, the chameleon. So that's another Disney thing. That they add the princess having like another animal buddy that's like a consistent thing, Yeah,
and then there's the horse, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yes. I gotta watch that movie again. It's great.
Yeah, that's a good one. Have you shown that to Natalie before?
Yeah, I have. I'm trying to think. She's watched a little bit of it with me, but I should turn it on again because she's obsessed with Monsters Inc. Like that's her thing. Actually, there's a really cute show on Disney Plus that she's obsessed with too called Super Kitties, and it's like a Disney Junior show. And I think there's like a couple seasons. The first season they're really really short episodes, but it's these 4 cats that wear superhero masks and they like fight crime and do superhero, but they're 4 cats and it's called Super Kitties. You have to check it out. It's so funny.
I guess so.
And Natalie's like memorizing the song. Like I'm memorizing it too. It's like Super Kitties. It's so cute. So
I'm gonna have to check this out.
Yeah, it's funny. Like your mom would probably get a kick out of that too, just because being a cat lover now.
Yeah.
So, anyways, but yes, I feel like this was so cool to touch on this. I feel like it would be cool to touch on other stories as well down the road. But yeah, this was really fun to. It was really fun to research and like learn some of the history of these stories. Because you just don't know sometimes. Like, where do they come from and why? So.
Yeah. And like I didn't too much of like the research of like the history and like where the stories came from. I just read the stories, which were obviously interesting and disturbing at the same time.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah.
We'll have to do a part 2 of this.
Yes. Love that. All right, John A. Well, it's been real. I'm gonna take a shower and go to bed because I'm old.
Oh yeah, no, it's past my bedtime too.
All right, John A. Well, we will see you next time.
See you next time.
All right. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate all your support. Please leave us a review and/or rating on your favorite podcast platform.
You can find us on Instagram and Facebook under Parks and Pixie Dust Podcast. We are also on Twitter and TikTok under Parks and Pixie Dust. Give us a follow and stay tuned for lots of updates.
And you can also email us at parksandpixiedustpodcast@gmail.com.
Our episodes are released bi-monthly on Wednesdays.